It's Pikachu!
Sebastian! Revenant is the Pokemon character of Nightreign and quite a complex character, so today we'll go through how to unlock her, the Remembrance, best relics, how to get the best use out of her, skills, and more. Let's go! So firstly, to unlock the Revenant, once you have unlocked the Duchess, you can purchase the besmirched frame from the Small Jar Bazaar, the guy that you can buy stuff from at the Round Table Hold. It's pretty cheap. And then once you purchase this, you'll see a Phantom of Revenant just hanging out in the east wing of Round Table Hold. Interact with the Phantom and you'll be taken back to the tutorial area and you have to beat Revenant and her 3 spirit summons. A couple of tips for just generally doing this, as it is quite a challenging encounter, is that the more of her summons that are active, the less aggressive they all are and herself, so they won't attack you as much. If you can pick a character like even say Duchess, for example, touching on her again, to sort of weave in like a hit and run tactic to run in, hit Revenant and then run out, or if you just want to take out all the summons and then just deal with Revenant one-on-one, you can do that as well. But just keep in mind that she will be more aggressive when it is just her casting things like discuses and all this sort of nonsense at you. So it is a challenging fight, but once you've beaten her, you will have her unlocked. Now the playstyle for Revenant is very much a backline damage dealer, but also a little bit of a support because of the ultimate, but really heavily focused on faith incantations. But you could potentially dip into staves, but like I would think in that case you would rather play Recluse. Now what's great about her is that she has an extremely high starting FP and the highest faith scaling of any character, being S scaling. The downside is that she has the worst starting HP and stamina of any of the characters, being D, and her strength and dex is also at C, and intelligence and arcane are at B. So because you've got a fair amount of arcane as well as faith, really good for any sort of dragon communion incantations, anything that typically requires a high amount of faith, and you will deal a ton of damage with these incantations and getting them off, especially the dragon communion ones, if you can find yourself a seal that does have them. The downside to her overall kit in general is, one, she has no weapon preference, which means that literally anything can drop for her when you're out exploring. In a way, it's a good thing because you can sort of tailor your build to whatever boss you're fighting for the weaknesses and also use whatever drops for you. But the bad thing about that is that it does take a while for things that you actually want to use to drop. Like you really have to seek them out sometimes as Revenant, and we'll touch on ways you can do that a little bit later in this video. But ultimately here, she is a backline caster with some fantastic summons that prevent her from taking damage. Speaking of those skills, her passive is Necromancy. This raises enemy ghosts to fight as allies. So anytime that Revenant deals a killing blow, there is a chance that that enemy will raise again as a phantom to then attack. Now something to note, this won't work for like large bosses, but any fodder enemies and like elites work, like pumpkin heads, banished knights, and any of the fodder enemies you find, it does work for them. In order for them to actually be revived, Revenant does need to deal the final blow on that target and actually finish them off. I don't think there is a limit to how many phantoms can be summoned, but I do believe it's like a percentage chance or something that of them can actually come back, because it doesn't happen all the time, but it's happened quite regularly. This is really beneficial against those like end of day bosses when you've got those like fodder enemies that spawn before the boss. If you let Revenant take all of these out, she basically gets like a phantom army to then fight that boss when it does summon until they do wear off. The skill is the main summons though. That is Summon Spirit, where she will use the lyre to summon a fallen member of her family. You've got 3 options here to choose from. Helen, the page, who's a dexterity focused that uses a rapier for thrusting attacks, best used against fast moving enemies and smaller enemies. Typically the main summon that you will use quite regularly in encounters because they move a lot quicker to sort of close the distance for enemies. Frederick, the burly cook, is a blunt damage pumpkin head basically that's fantastic to use in AoE scenarios when there's lots of enemies, then you want him to swing around and take them all out. Also against anything that's weak against blunt damage like the Crystallians, he's fantastic for that. Sebastian is the giant skeleton that you can summon and best used for stationary enemies as well as bosses. Does the most damage but can't move like the others can, so can be very hard to get Sebastian in the right spot, and definitely want to pay attention to Sebastian's positioning. He will roar when he can't reach enemies, which can do a bit of range damage and pull enemies towards him, sort of like a taunt, but definitely not as useful for some fast moving enemies. Now, when you don't have a summon active, as you only have one summon active at a time, they will gradually restore HP. You can see their HP at any time in the bottom left corner of your screen, and then you can resummon them at any time and use them in combat. They won't deal a ton of damage damage. It is beneficial damage, like you definitely want to have them out, but typically you're using them as distractions to prevent things from attacking Revenant directly, as she has such a low amount of health that you'll basically get one shot anytime you make a mistake. Something else to note about the summons is that they can also revive allies and yourself. If they are close by to them, they will actually go over and revive your teammates as well as you. The ultimate is Immortal March. Now, this releases a vengeful ire to make self and nearby allies immortal. So what that means is that you cannot die, basically, but that doesn't mean you can't take damage. So you will take damage and go down to literally 1 HP sometimes, but you won't actually die when this is active. So make sure you do have enough healing to keep yourself alive, or just like don't take damage while you do have this active. But when you do use Immortal March, it will revive near death allies. So anyone that's near you, it will immediately revive them, and whatever's active summon you have at the time will perform a additional attack. For Helen, this is a swift rapier combo where she jabs forward. For Frederick, it's a multi-hit spinning attack with his hammer. And for Sebastian, it's like Ghostfire long range like beam that he shoots out of his face. Now, while you can buff this ultimate with relics to do Ghost Flame damage as well, so that you can get a little bit of extra damage out of it, it is mostly used as a way to revive allies and keep yourself alive in supporting scenarios. You're very rarely going to use it offensively as an attack. It is significantly better used as a defensive weapon to restore your allies if they go down, as you're invulnerable while you're in that animation, so you can quickly revive them, especially if they have like 3 pips, like they've gone down 3 times. So really you want to hold this in any boss fight until you absolutely have to use it, and then pop it to save the day. The progression for Revenant and things you should look out for, realistically, it's finger seals. That's the main thing you want to use. Now, when you're looking at the map, bring up the map details, which will tell you at what locations various items have a higher chance of spawning. And you're obviously looking for the finger seals because you want to have as many finger seals as possible, because that's your main way of doing damage. I'm actually kind of like the claws that she starts with, and I'm not opposed to upgrading them, especially if you're using a relic that adds like a status ailment to them. Like I'm using a relic that adds poison to the fingers, and because they're such a fast attacking weapon, you can get that status off pretty quickly. So it gives you a little bit of extra damage, and they're quite easy to upgrade, as with the Smithing Stone 1 is simply fine. By the way, because the claws are fist weapons, you can two-hand them for those typical fist combos. And I do recommend to have some sort of a bow with you, so you've got a ranged option as well. So finding a bow somewhere on the battlefield before you get into bosses is beneficial, so you can keep your distance when you do run out of FP, because that is Revenant's major weakness, is their FP regeneration. As unlike the Recluse, who can regenerate FP with their skill, there is no way to do that here as the Revenant. So the best way for you to generate FP is by picking passives that are FP relevant, increasing your maximum FP, giving you some sort of FP restoration on successive attacks, for example, something like that. Or even as well, you can find passives on weapons that will restore FP when you have them in your offhand, like from attacks. But keep in mind that those attacks have to be weapon attacks, not spells. But it's just any way that you can get FP back is really beneficial. The main way is obviously through Starlight Shards, which you should be buying these from any of the merchants you find, especially the one before the Night Lord at the end of your run. Definitely want to have as many Starlight Shards with you as possible on any run, so that you can restore your FP. And then if worse comes to worse, if you've got a bow range weapon with you, you can stay alive in that regard and still deal damage from ranged. Or if you have to, you've got the claws you can lean on in melee range as well. But you could use a melee weapon. Like I did have this great run with the Marika's hammer, and you know there is the option to use melee weapons here, but it's just, you got to be really careful because of your health. Like you will get one shot, especially until you reach like level 8 or 9, where you've got a little bit more health. You can at least take one hit. Before that point, you make one mistake and you'll get one shot. And that's where these summons are really useful. All right, let's talk about relics and remembrances. Now, as always, the best relics come from the remembrance progression for all of the characters. Now, for Revenant, the remembrance is pretty simple. The main task that you actually need to do is to beat Tricephalus or the Dark Knight Drift while in the remembrance. Highly recommend to do Tricephalus and not Dark Drift Knight. Dark Drift Knight is a very tough boss, especially if you're early in your Revenant career and you just don't have these relics that can really back you up. The Tricephalus is the first boss in the game, super easy to do. Definitely recommend doing that. Now, by just simply doing this and then progressing through the remembrance, you don't have to do anything else or gain anything. You just have to continually go back into the remembrances and progress her story, and you'll get 2 fantastic relics out of it. The very first one that you gain is called the Small Makeup Brush, and the Revenant will power up while fighting along alongside family. That's your summon. So as long as you have a summon active, you'll actually gain additional attack power, plus the increased rune acquisition for self and allies is also quite beneficial. Now, the old portrait is the one you get for completing Revenant Remembrance. Now, this comes with two specific passives, one being to expend own HP to fully heal nearby allies when activating art. So that means whenever you use your ultimate, you'll fully heal your allies to expend all of your health. It'll keep you alive because you can't go down while you've got your ultimate active. You'll stay alive with 1 health, but just keep that in mind. And then the trigger Ghost Flame Explosion during ultimate art activation will increase the overall damage that your Immortal March does. Now, something to note is that while you're still early in your Revenant career, you can actually get a variant of that skill from the jar vendor. Once you've beaten 4 Night Lords, you'll be able to purchase the Grand Drizzly Scene from the jar vendor, which has that effect. Plus, it also has +2 Faith and +2 Arcane, which is really beneficial. And then for any of the other relics, you're really looking to anything that increases your incantations or your faith or mind, anything that really helps you with that FP generation. A couple of tips for the Revenant to close us out here. Because of that serious lack of FP, you really do want to make sure you are buying Starlight Shards from all the merchants that you come across. It is actually really important, especially before the last boss, and ask your friends to buy you Starlight Shards from any of the merchants with any of the leftover runes they have. Really does help, because in Nightreign, different to Elden Ring, they actually give you a massive chunk of FP at once rather than regenerating your FP over time. So you can quickly pop one and then go back to casting any of your incantations. I do recommend to carry a ranged weapon, as mentioned as well, in case you do run out, so you can stay in the distance. And for combos for the Revenant, in terms of like who other party members you should bring, definitely a frontliner, someone like a Raider, a Guardian, Wilder, or Executor, not too bad either, but someone that can frontline for you and take some of that damage, because you really want to be avoiding getting too close and personal and having enemies attack you, especially because of their heavy hitting attacks that will one-shot you in the early stages of the game. And Recluse is actually a low-key fantastic partner because of the Soul Blood Song ultimate that restores your FP when you do hit enemies. So it's a really good way. Also, you get HP back when you hit, but to get some of that FP back, as you'll be using quite a lot of it here, it's quite valuable to get some back in a rapid succession when they do use their ultimate. But I will link another Nightfarer guide for you right here to go and watch. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members and all the new members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.